Welcome to this section of the course where we're going to switch gears a little bit. We've been talking a whole lot about fractions, really important stuff. Now we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about decimal place value. We're going to talk about decimals basically. And then in the follow-on sections we're going to learn how to add and subtract decimals and so on and so forth, okay? But in this section I don't want to do any of that. I just want to talk to you about what a decimal is, okay? So imagine in front of you here you have the number 6 over here and you have the number 7 over here. Well, that's number 6 and that's number 7, but what is between those two numbers, between 6 and 7, okay? Well, you're going to have 6½ maybe, okay? So when you would ask yourself the question, what is between 6 and 7, okay? Well, you might have, for instance, 6½ That just means you're 6 and then you have a half more, because don't forget, fractions are used to talk about things in between numbers, okay? So 6½ 6 3/4, 6 1/4. There's a lot of fractions in there, okay? But fractions are kind of a pain to write down. I mean, they have a bar and there's the two numbers. So we have something else that we can use to talk about numbers when they're between the whole numbers there, and that's called decimals, okay? So anytime you have a decimal point, okay, you have some part of the number that's just kind of between two big numbers, between two whole numbers, okay? So to kind of see that, let's talk about what we're going to call the number line. Let's say this is the number 6, okay, this is the number 6, and over here, we're going to say this is the number 7, okay? So we're going to have this thing, we're going to call it the number line, okay? Here's a number 6, and way over here's number 7, and then way over there's number 8, number 9, number 10, and then over here, way back over here is 5, 4, 3, okay? But here we're only going to be looking at what is between 6 and 7. Now, we already said that between 6 and 7, we're going to have 6½, right? 6½, and it's going to be right in the middle here, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. We'll look here. We'll have 6½, but we're going to write it a little bit differently. Instead of writing the 1/2, we're going to say 6.5, okay? 6.5. Now to understand where this comes from, here is 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, and 6.4. So let's write this down. This is 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4. And then here's 6.5. Okay? So what would come after 6.5? You'd have 6.6, 6.7, 6.8, 6.9, and then 6.10, which is basically just going to roll over. It's not going to be 6.10, it's just going to be 7. Okay? So let's continue on here. You'd have 6.6, 6.7, 6.8, 6.9, and then you get to 7. Here we have a bunch of decimals, okay? Basically all it means is anytime you have a number with this decimal point and then a number after it, it's just trying to tell you some fraction of the number between this number and the next number. So all of these numbers, 6.1, 2, 3, 1, 2.3, 6.4, 6.5, 6.6, 6.7, 6.8, 6.9, all of those are little tiny numbers in between the big numbers, which is 6 and 7. That's really all it means, okay? So if I were to tell you, go give me, or go, 6.2 of something. Well, you're going to know that 6.2 is pretty close to 6. It's not too close to 7. It's kind of over here. 6.5 is going to be right in the middle. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's kind of why it's 6½, and so on. So you're going to have that. Okay, so when we're talking about stuff like this, okay, let's take the number 6.3 for instance, okay? This first digit behind the decimal point is called the tenths place, okay? It's called the tenths place, okay? It's called the tenths place. And then as you go more and more decimal points beyond there, you'll have different placeholders that we'll talk about in just a minute here, okay? So these are the numbers between 6 and 7. Now, I'm going to blow your mind a little bit here, and let's talk about something very cool, okay? Let's look at the numbers only between 6.3 and 6.4, okay? So let's do that over here. Here I'm going to come out right here, okay? So now over here, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw it right under here. Here's 6.3, and then way over here on the right, just like before, here's 6.4. And again, I'm going to have another number line. And this number line, this entire number line is representing everything just between 6.3 and 6.4. Okay? So here in the middle, you're going to have something kind of in the middle of 6.3 and 6.4. What you're going to have is, you're going to have 6.35. Okay, 6.35. So over here, 1, 2, 3, 4. What you're going to have over here, you're going to have, let me go ahead and write this a little bit smaller, make it a little bit simpler to understand. Okay, here's the 6.3. Okay, here down here, you're going to have 6.31, 6.32, 6.33, 6.34. Here's 6.35, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll have 6.36, 6.37, 6.38, 6.39, and then when we get to the end, again, we get to 6.4. Okay? So no matter how deeper and deeper and deeper you go into looking at the numbers, you can add more and more and more digits behind this decimal point, and all it's doing is it's more accurately telling you what number you're actually at. Okay? So you can keep doing this again and again and again if you want. You could look at all the numbers between here and make another number line, and you can do it again and again. Okay? But there's no point in doing all that. Okay? I just want to kind of tell you what the big deal is here. So if you had a number like 6.37, remember this first digit is called the tenths place. Well, this second digit is called the hundredths place. Okay, and then if you had something like 6.377, if you added another digit here, then this last digit would be called the thousandths place, and so on. Okay, so the bottom line is, behind every number you can add a decimal point, and you can start adding numbers back there. Now, the numbers behind the decimal point are just trying to zero in on exactly where you are between the number here and between the next whole number. So anything behind a decimal point is kind of like a fraction. It's telling you how close are you to the next number. Obviously, the bigger the number behind the decimal point, the closer you are to the next number. So here we were at 6.3. That's not too close. If we were at 6.9, we'd be pretty close. We'd be closer to 7 than we were to 6. So putting digits after the decimal point is just trying to tell you how close you are to the next number. Now you can keep adding digits here. Okay, here we added 1. Here we had the hundredths place. Here we added 1, and we had the thousandths place. The only other thing I really wanted to tell you is that when you start adding digits behind a decimal point, okay, the digit right after the decimal point, the tenths place, is worth more than the next digit, which is called the hundredths place, and this one's worth more than the thousandths place. And that can be seen right here on the board here, okay? The very digit right after the decimal point is going to determine where I'm at, pretty close, pretty close. Am I going to be close over to the 6, or am I going to be closer to the 7? As I start piling digits on, it's going to more accurately define where I'm at. You notice the second digit here, the second digit only affected where I'm going to be between 6.3 and 6.4. So it's only going to be able to do that for me. So the more digits you add after a decimal point, it doesn't mean the number gets bigger. I mean, you can have 7.7696342891011, and that isn't going to mean that that's a huge number. All it means is that you're really, really accurately saying after the decimal point what your position is between 6 and 7. Okay, but the digit right after carries the most weight, followed by the next digit and the next digit. And that's really all I want to say about this section. Just remember that a decimal is kind of like a fraction. It's just telling you when you're in between numbers where exactly you are, okay? And it's used to kind of tell you that. And you can continue adding digits behind the decimal, and that'll kind of more accurately tell you where you are between numbers, okay? And when we get to multiplying and dividing and adding and subtracting decimals, we're going to have to think about what we want to do with the decimal point, okay? So that is a basic introduction to decimal place value.